The 1982 Daytona 500 is perhaps best known for being the scene of NASCAR's strangest controversy. One of the long-held mantras associated with stock car racing is the phrase, "If you ain't cheating, you ain't winning." People like Smokey Yunick and Junior Johnson may have made their living outsmarting the rulebook, but plenty of others throughout the years were just as cunning and clever. One example that often gets overlooked is Diegard Racing, a team that exploded onto the scene in the mid-70s and flamed out a decade later. But in the short amount of time they were around, they took the fight to the likes of Junior Johnson's team, the Wood Brothers, and Petty Enterprises, and oftentimes came out on top. Much of their early success came in the hands of Darrell Waltrip in the number 88 Gatorade entry, but after having Ricky Rudd in the car in 1981, for 1982 the team had signed Bobby Allison. The 1982 Daytona 500 would be his first ride in that Buick. Only 4 laps into the race, the bumper cover on Allison's car came off by itself in the middle of turns 3 and 4. Drivers scrambled to miss it, causing a multi-car crash which involved Joe Milliken, Jeff Bodine, Lake Speed, and others. Almost immediately, eyebrows went up all along pit road, other teams knowing that having less bodywork would mean less drag and less weight. This fact was so obvious that Ned Jarrett, working the pits for CBS, directly asked Allison's crew chief Gary Nelson if he purposely assembled the bumper to come off, to which Nelson quickly denied.
Gary, there were some implications by a crew member of another team that maybe it was planned that way that you wanted that bumper to come home.
No way. That's a very dangerous situation. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't risk anybody's life that way.
Eventually, the fact that Allison's car had no bumper proved to be an advantage. Allison would go on to lead 147 of the 200 laps and win by 23 seconds. Even as other cars lined up in the draft, they couldn't get around him. As this was before restrictor plates, there were no big packs of cars, but you could still line up a few and get a big run on a sitting duck out front. In this race, however, there was no catching Allison. It should be noted that the Buick Regal was the car to have at Daytona in 1982, as 7 of the top 8 finishers were Regals, but Allison's advantage only compounded the natural advantage that Buick had on the rest of the field. Was the bumper falling off a stroke of genius or pure luck? NASCAR didn't have a ton of rules back then about bodywork like they do now, so Allison was of course free to finish the race with his car missing its bumper. In an appearance on the Dale Jr. download, Nelson explained that Cale Yarborough had bumped Allison the lap prior and loosened the bumper up. He further explained that NASCAR officials told the team the bumper needed to be lower in pre-race inspection, and they pop-riveted it into its new place rather than welding it. There were accusations, Nelson told the Miami Herald in 2000. That was definitely an accident, but circumstances piled up to where I couldn't defend myself, so I've tried to remain quiet on that one. Now, you can believe what you want to believe about his explanation, but Gary Nelson is really one of the great innovators, if you will, in NASCAR history, right up there with Junior Johnson. In those days, in the 70s, in NASCAR racing the officiating was not much, and if you raced in the 70s with a 100% rulebook legal race car, you didn't race for long because you would be out of business. Nelson was one of the pioneers of using lead buckshot to make weight and then dropping it during the race, and he also told Dale Jr. on the show that he'd make his cars go through inspection with a heavy fake radio system, and then they'd take it out and replace it with the much lighter actual radio system before the race started. Further accusations of secret fuel tanks just added to the legend. Diegard was a contentious team, with the owners willingly bending the rules and coming up with elaborate contract schemes to avoid having to pay drivers, which Waltrip talks a bit about on his own appearance with Dale Jr. Several years after the 1982 Daytona 500, Diegard Racing would bring a quote R&D car to the Firecracker 400 in 1985 with Greg Sachs driving. Diegard was always a home of internal strife, with owners and drivers butting heads. Nelson was caught in the middle, and decided to enter a second car for this race to show off who the real genius was. With tensions in the team already boiling, journeyman driver Sachs went on to dominate the race and claim his only Winston Cup win, which angered Allison to no end, leading him to quit the team after the race. Diegard soon imploded after Nelson left for Hendrick Motorsports and then Team Sabco, and their engine builder Robert Yates left to join Rainier Lundy Racing, which he eventually bought out and turned into Robert Yates Racing. Even though Diegard, to use some modern speak, might have been a so-called toxic workplace, many of the greatest drivers and best mechanics in history passed through their doors at one point or another. It should come as no surprise that eventually Gary Nelson would be hired by NASCAR and oversaw inspections, research and development, and safety. Who better to police things than one of the biggest rule benders? He is one of the most brilliant minds in stock car racing history, and stories like the 1982 Daytona 500 prove that. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.